Open University of Sri Lanka, the legal department was where I obtained my first degree, and that was a time when Professor Savithri Gunasekara was the head of the Department of Law, and I must say that we gained much from her experience. And I very well recall a particular viva in which I participated on the law of property, and the questioning, the manner in which she questioned us was a way forward for us to understand how the law has to operate, how the law has to function.
I would like to say that I am deeply and sincerely grateful for the university for imparting me with rich wealth of knowledge, for I would not be what I am today if not for the education imparted by the university to me. I have started my career as a military officer, and after completion of 20 years, I became a lawyer and started my practice in 2017. From 2019 onwards, I became a lecturer of the Kothalawada Defence University.
The knowledge and the skills that I have gained from LLB degree program of Open University has been beneficial for me to enhance my knowledge and making public statements all the time.
The degree offered by the Department of Language Studies using the ODL philosophy. As a result, I gained my degree while working, offered me the flexibility to be a wealth creator outside the university and also combine and create knowledge within the university.
I have been in the teaching profession for the past 12 years. After the completion of the first year of this career, I thought of gaining a professional qualification which goes hand in hand with what I teach here in the school.
I decided to join OUSL in response to my passion to update myself as I crave to acquire new skills and discover new teaching methodologies in both language and literature teaching.
I am now a senior program officer working with the Muslim Women's Research and Action Forum. I graduated in 2008 at the Open University's BA program in Social Studies. This helped me to further my education, and I have also done my Masters in Development Studies and Public Policy.
You get to learn at your own pace. That is the best thing. Further, there are multiple entry and exit points with certificate level programs to graduate level programs up to postgraduate level programs. The department itself is a learning experience. It is where you can learn freely.
My field is development sector, working in INGOs for last 20 years, and following these two courses at OUSL helped me a lot in terms of deepening my knowledge and improving my analytical skills.
LLB degree program conducted by the Open University of Sri Lanka is one of the best law degree programs in the country.
I've written 2 novels and 2 collections of short stories. The novel, Playing Pillow Politics at MGK in 2012 won Sri Lanka's prestigious literary prize, the Gratian Award, all because of the knowledge and the experience I gained at the Open University of Sri Lanka.
Anybody interested in this course will definitely benefit in life, in society, personally, and give your best social human beings working together in Sri Lanka.
It is a golden opportunity, I believe, to broaden your horizons. And I consider BA in Social Sciences as a launching pad for dynamic and enterprising youth, and also those career professionals who want to advance in their relevant fields.
The Open University offers a very unique way for a student to study. Because it is distance learning, it gives you an opportunity of studying while getting along with your other aspects of life. For myself, I first entered law college, and I would say that the experience which I had enriched my legal career.
Invest and empower yourselves at OUSL for a brighter future.
Hello, good afternoon. There is a small problem in our connection and we are struggling to start the video. But in the interest of time, I think we should go ahead. So let us just proceed. And may I just invite our first presenter to... Okay, so to make the first presentation, please, can we have someone playing the recording?
Hello, madam. I'm the first presenter. I think, do I need to play the recording, madam?
No, Mihiri, the first presenter wants to know that she needs to play the recording. No, our OU team, technical team will be playing the recording.
Sure,
so just stay there. You will be needed for Q&A, yeah?
Sure, madam. Okay. Good day, everybody. I am SS Dahanayaka with KRWKH Abhevikrama. My research is titled as Teacher Perspectives on the Flipped Classroom Model for English Language Teaching in Sri Lanka. First, let's move on with the background of the study. A sustainable future is where people can secure a quality education. Addressing the needs of the students in the 21st century ensures a better quality education. In this revolutionary modern era, teaching pedagogies are driven by complex networks of global changes. As such, teachers are highly likely to use a blend of technology in their classroom practices. Hence, in order to align with the modern globalized world with new teaching and learning, teachers adopted the flipped classroom method. The flipped classroom is a pedagogical method of learning where the education is revolved around the technology to have an active learner background. The study was conducted on a research problem. It is apparent that the flipped classroom method is extensively used in English language teaching classrooms in the world. In Sri Lanka too, English teachers are promoted to move on with the trend and make use of various and authentic teaching techniques to motivate the students when learning the language. Although the flipped classroom model has been practiced in ESL classrooms in Sri Lanka for years, it is highly questionable to which extent teachers use this method to enrich the learning of the students. According to the general statistics of the honorary level examination, 51.12% have failed the English paper in the year 2017, which is recorded as the lowest pass percentage when compared to the other subjects. The continuous use of the traditional teaching techniques in English language classrooms has become a key reason to produce poor results. The exam-oriented traditional teaching and learning methods are considered to be oppressive. Therefore, they cannot address the learner's English language needs. So teachers really need to outperform new language teaching techniques such as the flipped method instead of the non-productive traditional teacher-centered classrooms. In such a background, it is indeed an important task to evaluate the teacher perspectives on the flipped classroom model for English language teaching in Sri Lanka. The significance of the study. Today, the world is highly based on technology. So the foreign countries are gearing up in the process of incorporating innovative and latest trends into the classroom. But unlike the foreign countries, Sri Lanka is still on track to meet the latest trends around the world, so that the effectiveness of the flipped classroom model for English language teaching has not been researched extensively in the context of Sri Lanka. In 2017, Jayasuriya has investigated on how flipped classroom model can be used to improve comprehension skills of English language learners. And in 2019, Iyer has extensively explored the effectiveness of flipped classroom approach for scaffolding the slow learners in ESL classrooms. As indicated in the previous literature, no study has examined ESL practitioners' awareness of flipped classroom model and their ability to use this approach for classroom practices. The key aim of the study was that to examine how the flipped classroom model impact on English language teaching. The study also had three specific objectives. The ability to convert the traditional classroom into flipped classroom model was explored through the perspectives of the ESL teachers. Adequate knowledge of technology is one of the main components in redirecting the traditional classroom system. Thus, the possibility of having flipped classroom with a blend of technology in the immediate society was investigated in the study. Substantial evaluation of the existing school curriculum was also reviewed to find out the possibility of having flipped classroom models in the schools in Sri Lanka. The key research question of my study was that, how does the flipped classroom model impact on English language teaching? And that was followed by four general questions. The first one, do teachers successfully flip the traditional teacher-centered classroom? The second, how does the flipped classroom model impact on students' performance? Third, do teachers have an adequate knowledge of technology to handle the flipped classroom model? Fourth, does the ESL curriculum facilitate flipped classroom practices? Now let's move on with the methodology of the study. A qualitative research was conducted with 10 ESL teachers from the Colombo educational zone. The study used semi-structured interviews as the data collection instrument, and the thematic analysis was used for organizing, analyzing, and interpreting data. Results and discussion. According to teacher perceptions of the implementation of the flipped classroom model, teachers have been practicing the flipped classroom model for years without knowing the terminology flipped. Problem-solving tasks with peer learning along with the predetermined knowledge that they gain at home is something that they have been practicing for years, even in the traditional classroom. The only difference is the combination with the technology in the teaching learning program. According to teachers, this type of learning promotes to increase the students' internal capacity. So teachers find this method as inquiry-based learning. Traditional classroom versus the flipped classroom method. The benefits of the traditional classroom are clearly visible because it is hands-on learning experience. Nevertheless, the flipped classroom model is far more advantageous because it is learner-friendly. The traditional classroom method is spoon-feeding, but the students can have fun along with the learning process in the flipped classroom method. Flipped classroom is far more successful in the densely populated classroom. The traditional classroom adheres to the development of the hard skills, and the flipped classroom helps to develop the soft skills of the students. But flipping is not always possible. In certain areas, mixed methods should be adopted by the teachers. Impacts of the personal and external factors on the flipped classroom model. The main concern of the flipped classroom is the idea of using technology. But most of the teachers find it difficult to handle the technology as it doubles the workload due to lack of exposure given. Most of the time, parents are very concerned about covering the syllabus. So the parents are in favor of the traditional teaching classroom. Weak internet connection and limited resources make students discouraged when switching the sites that they are not comfortable with. And also, the Sri Lankan education system is sustained to address the short-term aim of passing the exams. Thus, there is no demand for innovation such as the flipped classroom model in the context of Sri Lanka. When it comes to the conclusion, the flipped classroom method is not a novel experience in the Sri Lankan context. Employing the blend in technology enhances the teaching learning process of English as a second language. Using innovative methods in teaching learning lessons favor both flexibility and accessibility in teaching English as a second language. The students welcome the inverted classroom tradition while maintaining the conventional classroom tradition of explaining the basic concepts and traditions. In order to overcome the confrontations faced by the students and the teachers when flipping the teaching techniques, it is recommended to have a deeper analysis of the students' requirements prior to implementing the flipped classroom model for teaching ESL, and also to conduct training workshops for ESL teachers on how to employ latest technological devices. The findings of the study have implications for material designers and institutions that are responsible for the framing and delivery of the necessary programs. The findings are also advantageous for the teachers or the instructors. Parents and students also can be re-educated through the findings of the study. And this marks the end of my presentation. These are the references that I used. Thank you very much for listening for my presentation. And now you may ask any questions if you have.
Thank you very much, Sonali, and thank you very much for being very efficient with the time. So I thank you for opening with an interesting and timely session. I have a couple of questions, but before that, I would like to ask if anyone else has any questions. Please feel free to ask Sonali. Sonali, may I please ask you to switch your camera on, please?
Are you already did, madam? The camera is on.
Sorry, 1 minute. Right. So let me then ask you a question, Sonali. I noticed that one of your research questions was, does the ELT curriculum facilitate the flipped classroom model?
can you just elaborate on your findings for that particular question?
Yes, madam. So the current the syllabus in our Sri Lankan system, it just supports the exam-oriented short-term aim of passing the exam. So the flipped classroom is just not just like when we compare with the traditional system, the current educational system that we have, it goes in line with the like by hearting, repeating those things. So I mean, the flipped classroom is just an innovative way of teaching for the students using the latest technological devices and I mean, having out of classroom tradition. So the syllabus does not really support for the innovative ways of teaching in the world. So I don't find like the syllabus is very supportive for the innovative ways that we are introducing.
Right. So based on that, if I were to ask you, based on what you saw and what you heard, would you say that the flipped classroom method in our school system is a success or not?
Like so far, it's not that much of a success because according to statistics and all, although like teachers have been practicing it, but still because like Sri Lanka is, as we know, it's still a developing country and with all the limited resources and with the crisis that we are going through. So although teachers want to try it, still because of the limited resources and all, they are kind of boxed and they are limited to they are not very when they are using it, they need to just focus on the student side and also from their perspective. So too. So in that case, as I said, although like it's been for a long time, although they have been practicing it, it's not that much of a success in the Sri Lankan context. According to statistics also, I showed it in the research problem.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to ask Sanali any questions? No? All right. Then thank you very much, Sanali. Good luck with, I hope this results in some kind of publication. Good luck.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Okay. So let us move on to our next presenter then. Can we have the presentation of PDSN Disanayake?
Good afternoon. I am PDSN Disanayake from the Vaimba University of Sri Lanka. My presentation brings some findings for shaping the next normal of English language teaching based on insights from a post-pandemic online teaching context in a Sri Lankan state university. As we all know, COVID-19 outbreak resulted in a sudden transition from traditional face-to-face classes to online platforms. The DELT in Vaimba University also started emergency eclectic online English courses, initially using asynchronous one-way teaching methods through the LMS and then synchronous conference tools. As ESL practitioners, we understand that teaching English as a second language is not an easy task. Teachers need to help learners to acquire social linguistic, discourse, and strategic competence through sustained practice. So teaching English online demands a substantial amount of effort and understanding and paying close attention to every change in classroom. When considering literature or reviewing literature on online education, many empirical studies have shed light on its both pros and cons. As per the studies conducted by Hattotua and Rupasinghe 2021, Subhashini and others, and Priyadarshini 2021, Online education was a practical option during COVID. But Hattotu and Rupasinghe highlight students' acceptance of continuing online teaching in the post-COVID era, whereas Priyadarshini's study reveals teachers' doubts regarding the same. If online education is to persist, Hayashi and others suggest for curriculum and assessment revisions, technology enhancement, and attitudinal change of faculty and students. When considering the literature on teaching English online, there are studies which have identified poor technical skills, delivery issues, motivation issues as challenges. Sri Lankan studies on online ESL education highlights the need of proper training for instructors and technological facilities, as well as psychological guidance. Language performance and development of students can be negatively affected if such drawbacks are not addressed. Many studies in Sri Lanka have been conducted at metro level, mostly focusing on quantitative data on online education. It was useful to conduct a study at Wimber to understand the reality, especially through a qualitative analysis. Online English courses were initiated at the Faculty of Business Studies and Finance at Wimber University with a favorable response from both students and teachers. But gradually, their involvement and enthusiasm seemed to diminish and students' attendance was very poor. The sustainability of fully distance English education was problematic. As attitudes are paramount in teaching and learning English with emerging technologies, the study intended to address two research questions. Is there a change of attitudes towards online teaching and learning among undergraduates and teachers after the pandemic? What is the feasible replacement for fully online English teaching and learning at tertiary level in the next normal? So a qualitative study was conducted to get a detailed picture of the situation. Data were collected through 5 Zoom focus group discussions with students, 3 in-person interviews with English teachers, and their reflective journals. Participants were selected through purposive sampling, and all the qualitative data were analyzed based on Brown and Clark's thematic analysis. Now let's move on to the results of the study. It was identified that participants had realized with experience that online education was not very conducive. So there was a change in their attitudes. Several reasons were uncovered for the change under 4 categories. Firstly, attitudes related to technological issues had affected them. Handling large classes online with nearly 150 students was a real challenge for the teachers. Although breakout rooms were available, students' participation was very low. So scaffolding in breakout rooms or in group work did not come into play well. Teachers didn't have enough time to visit all the breakout rooms within 2 hours and monitor students' work and give feedback. So as the teachers mentioned, irrelevant chats were identified most of the times. Importantly, students preferred physical presence than online presence. In fact, there were students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Even though the access to university servers was said to be free, some students complained that it was not. Also, the lecture recordings were uploaded to the LMS as Google Drives, Google Drive links, and also other websites, YouTube links were given. So the students were not happy about it because they were charged and they found it difficult to access to them. In fact, the faculty had the practice of uploading lecture records, so that some students deliberately didn't attend classes, as both the teachers and students revealed. Further, The study identified the lack of student support mechanism in terms of online English education. Next, the findings uncovered attitudes related to affective issues. Students were frustrated as they were waiting to come to the university in person and get that experience. As the link between physical activities and cognitive functions create positive academic performance, it negatively affected their motivation. Silence in online classes implied the students' reluctance to speak. They were concerned about recordings. Speaking online was awkward for many students. In fact, they were shy to turn on cameras. Due to the learners' passive behaviors, teachers also had become inactive. They said they minimized the use of breakout rooms and collaborative tasks as they wasted time. So the classes had become more teacher-centered. As other studies highlighted, students were unprepared for fully distance education. In addition, socioeconomic factors also contributed to this attitudinal change. Due to the growing economic crisis, students and teachers were feeling uncertain. They were teaching and learning amidst daily struggles. So finding access to technology was also a challenge, and unfortunately, 15 students had left university due to financial issues. So socioeconomic factors had affected the attitudes. In fact, assessment was another problematic area which resulted in the dissatisfaction with remote education. Plagiarism made semester-end examinations unreliable, and teachers faced difficulties in marking scanned answer scripts. In fact, some students were anxious about online submissions and open book method. However, students demonstrated a favorable response towards technologies such as Padlet, Jamboard, videos, Flipgrid, WhatsApp, etc. The teachers also didn't want to drop the online features completely, so both teachers and students liked the blended pedagogy. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that fully remote English education was disliked by the participants. Anyhow, the crisis gave us an opportunity for a renaissance in online English education at YMF. Considering it as an experiment, we can use its strengths for a blended approach in the post-pandemic era and assume it to be the next normal. But we need a right mix. We need to further research to select the best model of blended pedagogy, such as flipped class, supplemental blended approach, enriched virtual blended approach. In order to start and make blended courses successful, for English, the study recommends to encourage a synergetic work environment among teachers, IT experts, and institutional leaders, introduce rigorous quality assurance methods, technology policies, and provide proper teacher training. These are the reference.
Okay, you're done. Right. Thank you very much. So I am just going to ask you a couple of questions and then open it out to any of our participants who also may have questions. Did I hear you say that 15 students dropped out?
Yes.
Right. May I know your first name?
Sandapa.
Right. Oh, Sandapa. Of course. Right. So, Sandapa, I just want to link that statistic that 15 students have dropped out to the sentiments expressed by a keynote speaker. Because if you were listening to what Parakrama said this morning, that is 15 students too many. And what is your response? Now you have done a very good study, you have your findings. We do have a situation where, as you very rightly pointed out, the socioeconomic factors have a huge impact on how this is received. how do you respond to the statistic that 15 students no longer are going to get a university education, Sandapa?
Exactly, Dr. Robo. It was basically due to these socio-economic issues, because I could contact some students. So they said they did not have that technological support to continue with this education. And these were the first years, and who were expecting to come to the university and have a very good higher education experience. So I think, yes, it's a very serious issue. Now, this is a faculty with the largest number of management students in the Sri Lankan university system. So, yes, we could have had a different mechanism, a student support mechanism to, take them with us. Now they've been studying online more than 1 year in the university. Yes, Dr. Ono.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to ask any questions? Mihiri Jans, your hand is raised. Yeah, Mihiri, go ahead.
First off, Sandapa, brilliant job. I think these are questions that had to be asked. I'm
you.
so glad that you're given a voice. I mean, these are real voices, and I know you're a tech person. So the fact that you're willing to see the other side of tech is very, very important and very crucial. I know you're not biased. So, and actually, personally for me also, I felt it was food for thought as a teacher educator and as someone who uses Zoom. These are things that I'm going to take home and talk about, but I do have a technical question about your study. So you said change in attitudes. So what did you consider as your baseline though, Sandapa?
Could you please?
So you said change, like you talk about the attitudes changing.
Yeah.
From what? Like, so what is your baseline attitude that it changed from? Like, what were you taking the literature? Because that's what I was assuming when I was listening to you.
You mean literature?
No, in your study, you said that now they don't like online.
Yeah.
How did you?
Yeah, before starting online education, we had discussions with the student unions and all. They had a favorable response.
Oh,
so
okay.
They liked it, but
Right.
in the post-pandemic era, that attitude was changed. So that's what I wanted to.
So you basically had a baseline based on student views. This was the original.
Yeah.
Okay, so very interesting. That was, I just had a little bit of question mark. Thank you again, Sandapa. Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Ms.
because I thought it was really, really an important contribution.
Thank you, Ms. Jans.
Right.
Thank you.
Mihiri, are we out of time? Do we have to move on, Mihiri?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're out of time.
All right, Sandapa. I did have another question, but that can wait for another day. Good luck, though, with everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Amula.
All right. Let us move on to our third presentation. And this is by M.I. Manatunga.
Hello everyone, I am Mudita Lakmali. I am going to present my research study, which is an action research on increasing students' interest in English grammar lessons. So, this is the content of my presentation. And moving on to the first section of my presentation, which is the introduction. So, as we all know, it is an undeniable fact that the teaching of grammar in second language classroom is one of the major concern for the success of second language learning. So according to Wilcox 2004, he defined grammar as a system of rules which allows the users of the language in question to create meaning. So, however, when it comes to Sri Lankan context, actually, we all know that the importance of grammar as a communicative competence has been ignored for a long time, and this misconception of the belief that grammar is merely teaching of forms has been at the core of English language teaching. So according to Kahan, 2007, in his study on effective grammar teaching in ESL classroom, he proposed that teaching students how to use grammar in daily lives instead of just giving them the rules, structures and all, by following traditional steps, which is a very successful way for their language learning development. So when reviewing the literature, most of the research findings witness that English language teaching and learning in Sri Lanka have been a failure due to lack of interest and motivation of students in learning English. So therefore, it is very important to change these ways, traditional ways of teaching grammar, and replace them with updated, modern teaching ways of teaching grammar and approaches in order to maximize both success and motivation of the students' English language learning and teaching. So accordingly, the purpose of this study is to explore the reasons for students' lack of interest in learning grammar and how to find out ways to increase students' interest in learning grammar in the English as a second language classroom. Accordingly, there are two research questions posed. First one is, what are the underlying reasons of students' lack of interest in grammar lessons? And the second question is, what can a teacher do to increase the students' interest in grammar lessons? So moving on to the methodology of my presentation. So since this is an action research, designed a flow-diverse classroom-based and teacher-initiated design. So as the participants of the study, 30 students from grades 10 in a government school were selected as 10 boys and 20 girls, and their UTEL benchmark, their proficiency level was UTEL 3, and as the conductor and the researcher, the researcher spent 2 hours per week with the students to teach grammar, and overall the time duration was 4 weeks. And this study began with a questionnaire which helps the researcher to find out the needs and the reasons for why the students lack of interest and motivation to learn English. And this study ended up with semi-structured interviews and focus group discussions in par with the action research implemented. So accordingly, the action plan was implemented to find out the solutions to the problems in grammar teaching and learning in the classroom based on the implications from the students' responses to the questionnaire. And also this focused on delivering grammar points to the inductive approach instead of deductive approach. And this focused on creating a communicative grammar classroom that maximizes the interest and participation in collaborative activities. And finally, this action plan focused to enhance positive attitudes towards the students by the teacher that affects the increase of the interest of the students. Moving on, so according to this diagram, these two figures, you can see figure 1, it shows the grammar class experience by the students before implementing the action research, and the figure 2 shows the grammar lessons based on the action plan. And moving on to the results and discussions of my study. So the findings show a clear difference in the perception of the students towards the grammar lessons after implementing the action plan. So the results of the study indicates that the level of the interest of learning grammar was increased by implementing interactive and student-centered activities. So 4 changes were done according to the responses from the questionnaire, and accordingly these are the findings according to the changes made during the action research process. So the first change was the classroom was changed from teacher-centered to student-centered, and the findings were from this change, it increased the students' participation and interest, and also student talk time was increased when compared with the teacher talk time. And the students were much more enthusiastic involved in collaborative activities such as group work, pair works, and kind of role plays and those type of activities. And the second change was the classroom, the teaching was changed from deductive to inductive. So this enhanced learning the rules and structured in a holistic way. And also this entertained learning grammar lessons because of because of the usage of kind of videos, songs, movie clips to teach grammar. And also therefore students motivation to learn grammar was also increased. And the third change which was made is that the classroom was very static before implementing the action plan, and the intention was to change it to a dynamic classroom. And by this change, the classroom was very active. There was a usage of integration of authentic materials in the classroom like pictures, flashcards, and etc. And also collaborative learning, and also students' participation and interest was increased at the end. And the last change made was the teacher was changed from pessimistic teacher to optimistic teacher. So there being a pessimistic teacher means that teacher should be a facilitator. And also that when the students made a mistake, the teacher should not make recorrect it or give recorrect it or correct it immediately, and they should let the students to change their mistake by themselves and by discussing with the peers. And coming to the conclusion of my research study, so the ESL students in today's society have more interest in learning English grammar points through more innovative, enjoyable, and interactive ways. And therefore, the ESL, it's the duty of the ESL teachers to implement an interactive language classroom by involving students in different kind of activities, by replacing traditional, removing traditional teacher-centered method and replacing them with updated student-centered activities to enhance the students' interest and the motivation to learn grammar lessons. Accordingly, these are the references of my research study, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. May I know your first name also? I'm sorry, I like to call you all by name.
Mudita, Dr. Ramo.
Right, Mudita. So now, Mudita, I didn't quite understand your figure 1 versus figure 2. Is there a possibility for us to go back to the PowerPoint from our OU technical support team? Or Mudita, just tell me in your own words what you were trying to do there.
Yes, before I implement the questionnaire, before I spread the questionnaire with the student, that was the classroom they were experiencing, Dr. Ramola. And when the expectation of the action research was figure 2, the changes.
It was your expectation, not what you actually found.
No, the expectation and findings actually those similar, the same findings as well.
Oh, okay. All right. So I had a specific question, but it's difficult without the PowerPoint. So let me just move on. Let me just play devil's advocate a little bit. Now, you said that there was a general lack of interest in learning grammar on the part of the students, right?
Yes, yes.
So if I were to ask you this, Mudita, does it take a full action research project for you to know that if the teacher goes from pessimistic to optimistic, if the class goes from static to dynamic, the student's attitude towards grammar would change? Is there a study there? That to me seems intuitive. What is your response?
You mean like why the reason I did it, right?
I suppose because to me there's no study there.
Because like for a long time those students were in grade 10, so they were like very like kind of they lack interest in learning grammar and all. And therefore, since that was my school, I know, and the teacher and all, I personally know them. And according to the responses I got from the teacher and also from the students, I thought of like doing an action research, 4 weeks action research, by changing all the teaching process and all. What I have implemented in the action research, and the findings were actually helpful for them to improve by teacher side and also from students.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions, anyone? It would be good if we had our other participants and fellow presenters also asking the question and asking questions and making this session interactive.
Dr. Romo, Sandapa here.
Sandapa, yes, Sandapa.
I think the intervention, she could have explained the intervention further, like what kind of activities she utilized for this action research. I mean,
Good. So
Yes.
if I pass that question over to Mudita, Mudita,
Yes.
what were the changes?
Changes, actually those are the changes that I got like implementing integrating authentic materials and using communicative language teaching approach along with task-based teaching approaches, more updated teaching approaches which which we can interact with students as a teacher. So without teaching them just the rule of rule the grammar, if we take without teaching the rule and the structure first. So those are the changes I did, and yes, as Ms. Sandapa said, like it is good if I have elaborated it further.
Okay, thank you, Mudita. Just for future reference, though, if you are doing an action research, and action research projects can be very useful in the classroom context, but it's also worthwhile thinking a little bit about whether it is a question worth asking. Because if the students are not very interested, I would imagine that all of us with some level of ELT experience would be able to take a good hard look at the way it is taught and make it more interactive, make the materials more authentic, make the classroom more dynamic, make the teacher more optimistic. I mean, so that way, I would imagine without an action research, you should be able to figure these things out. But yeah, that's just a future reference. But thank you very much for your study, Mudita.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramana.
Okay, right. Let us then move on to session number 4. And this one will be by Shamila Kothalawala and P. Kothalawala. Can we have the recording, please?
I welcome all of you to our presentation on analysis of comparative move analysis of letters and their pedagogical use in teaching English for specific purposes. I am Shamila Kothalawala and the co-author is Tamara Kothalawala, and we are from the Department of Languages of KDU. These are the contents of our presentation. To begin with, writing a formal letter with appropriate style and organization is a demanding task for many learners, as they should pay attention to the conventions of the genre as well as fulfill its audience expectations. Qasim claims that in order to communicate effectively in workplaces, learners should have a sufficient command of the specific generic structure of correspondence used in target situations. Therefore, many researchers in teaching English for specific purposes have explored rhetorical patterns in academic and professional letters, and the majority of them have employed a comparative approach. They have employed Swell's move analytical approach to identify the text organizational patterns of the genre. Swells introduced the move analysis approach with his CARS model in 1990, which included 3 moves. The move 1, establishing a territory, included 3 steps or strategies that used to realize the move: claiming centrality, making topic generalizations, reviewing items of previous research. According to Swells, a move is a discoursal or rhetorical unit that performs a coherent communicative function in a written or spoken discourse. It is the communicative purpose that defines a genre, which comprises a class of communicative events, and the members who write and read the genre share the set of communicative purposes. A popular convention of move analysis of letters is employing a comparative approach. The majority had employed Kaplan's concept of contrastive rhetoric, which claims that every culture develops its distinctive patterns of thinking, and these patterns influence the organizational structure of writing. The sequence of thought and rhetorical patterns of any two cultures may vary to some extent. Though there are many genre analyses of letters, so far researchers have not examined the diversity in comparative move analysis of letters. Therefore, the purpose of this study is to explore the diversity in comparative move analysis of letters, the types of comparisons made, and the pedagogical concerns of them. We have employed the qualitative case study methodology to provide a rich description of the single phenomenon of comparative move analysis, employing the document analysis of Bowen 2009. We selected 6 comparative move analysis of letters published online in peer-reviewed journals from 2000 to 2019. All studies have employed Swell's approach in segmenting moves, and qualitative thematic analysis was employed to identify, analyze, and interpret themes in the comparative move analysis of letters. Let me present the results of our study. The first type of comparison includes letters of the same domain. Kunna and Montale analyzed the 5 genres of the same domain. They were written by laymen to administrators, which caused difficulty to the writers. The cover letters, letters of allegation, complaint, claim, and application. They found significant differences among the more structures of the 5 genres, and they have provided characteristics at textual, lexical, and discourse level which are useful for the novice writers of the genres. Hanel compared business collection letters in 3 stages: initial, intermediate, and demand stage. Though the communicative purpose of a collection letter remained the same throughout the 3 stages, they differed at the step level. And also, Hanel introduced the strategies for encouraging communication and negotiation between the creditor and debtor, which are useful for the students of business credit management. The second type of comparison include letters written by different nationalities. Qasim analyzed business quotation call letters written by non-native and native employees in a Pakistani organization. They found the differences in the 2 rhetorical structures. The native employees had more detailed, clear, and elaborated descriptions in the letters compared to the non-native employees, and they introduced norms in business writing required for non-native employees to fit themselves in the foreign organizational context. Howe analyzed internship cover letters written by Taiwanese and Canadian hospitality students and found out similarities and differences in moves and linguistic features. She introduced integrating cross-cultural corpora into the writing classes so that students get awareness of the rhetorical patterns in their own culture as well as in the other culture. Tumnong and others analyzed job application letters written by participants from 6 nationalities: Indonesian, Malaysian, Filipino, Thai, Singaporean, and Vietnamese. In all the letters, they found out 8 moves employed by the applicants from every country, and they named that a job application letter is a class of communicative event bound by the social cultural setting. Let me introduce the third type of comparison. It was letters written by different cultural groups. Nguyen and Miller analyzed scenario English business letters written by Vietnamese students and authentic business letters written by professionals. The students' rigid application of rules can be seen in contrast to the flexible approach used by the practitioners. They introduced that student culture as a small culture in which novice writers represent the smallest entity, whereas the professional writers represent the bigger culture. Let me discuss the results of our study. We identified that comparative move analysis consists of letters of the same domain, letters of different nationalities, and letters of different cultural groups. Those analyses are shaped and constrained by cultural differences, though members of a particular discourse community share the same communicative purposes. The differences in the move structure of the letters are due to the differences in writers' cultural backgrounds and their rhetorical and lexical knowledge of writing the letters. The comparative move analysis of letters aim to help learners acquire textual, lexical, and discourse features of letters used in their own culture as well as in others. For example, workplaces of different cultural context. To conclude our presentation, we have introduced different types of comparisons in comparative move analysis of letters and their pedagogical usefulness. These analyses provided evidence of cultural diversities in relation to the rhetorical patterns of the letters. And this study provided an understanding of the rationale for the use of comparative approach to move analysis of letters. And there should be more studies in comparing student and professional genres, specifically the letters, to provide useful move step models and knowledge related to cultural norms of genre construction by the professionals to help ESP learners acquire writing letters appropriately. And these are our references. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shamila. Can I see you? Ah, there you are. Right. So that was very interesting, and I was wondering, so it was a study based on a review of the literature.
Yes, it was initial literature review. The categories developed can be validated with more data, and it's a part of a larger study where the move analysis of letters are analyzed, so that I found this phenomenon of comparison is more prevalent in the literature rather than exploring one single genre. Most of the writers were interested in comparing two types of letters from different cultures. So when I want to categorize and have a rationale why they are doing it, what type of comparisons they are being made. So it's a kind of initial theoretical concept where you can have more data to validate each category.
Right. Thank you, Jamila. So that kind of begs the question, where are you planning to take this? So now you're trying to come up with some kind of theoretical conceptual understanding, and then what?
Then later on I can modify it if I found more other categories rather than these three. I have to modify the model, or else I can validate it with more data and keep it as the same.
Right. When you say validate it with more data, where are you going to get your data from? Are you, in other words, my question is, are you planning to look at, are you planning to do a move analysis of Sri Lankan writers of letters and look at how the move analysis is used, or what?
Yeah, it may be Sri Lankan or else in the other context of the world where I can select, I can go for more comparative move analysis and check the type of comparisons that they have made and what are their significances, so that it's not only the Sri Lankan context, the sample included only 6 comparative move analysis. More data or the more documents or more text can be incorporated to make it a bigger study.
Right. Thank you. Interesting. Anyone else has any questions? Any comments, any ideas for Shamila? All right, then good luck, Shamila, with the larger work.
Thank you, Dr. Rama.
All right. Thank you. Let's move on to the next presentation, which is by BN Tennakoon.
Hello everyone, I am Dilni Jayaratne and my co-author is Chamali Gamuge. We are going to present a study on identifying difficulties encountered by Sri Lankan ESL students at the first certificate in English, that means FCE, listening tests. This is the scope of our presentation. Moving on to the introduction, Sri Lankan students who study English as a second language face diverse challenges during internationally recognized listening tests. According to the literature, numerous studies have indicated that efficient listening skills are equally important to the other skills as a factor contributing to academic success. Also, due to the fact that ESL teachers and content developers pay more attention to English grammar, comprehension, and vocabulary, ESL learners have serious problems with listening skills. So, listening activities have not become important components of many course books or curricula while designing the lessons. Therefore, this study appears as a requirement for curriculum designers and educators to assist them in developing appropriate language programs with equal weight for all the language skills. Furthermore, the FCE test, which is subjected to this study, belongs to the CEFR B2 level. The test includes all language components where the students are evaluated for reading, writing, speaking and listening within 3 hours. In the listening section of the test, the students listen to the audio tracks where British English is spoken within different contexts. Hence, the listening test of FCE is selected for this study since it is recorded that the students score low marks ranging from 5 to 15 out of 30 marks for listening. So these are the research questions. To what extent are FCE candidates exposed to listening in English? What type of listening difficulties are encountered by FCE candidates? So in particular, the present study is focused on identifying the listening comprehension problems encountered by the ESL students attempting the FCE test conducted by the ESAL College International Panipitiya, which is a Cambridge Examination Preparation Institute, and investigating the extent of exposure to listening in English. To fulfill the objectives of the research, a mixed methodology was adopted using both qualitative and quantitative methods as defined by Smith 2012. Quantitative methods are those that deal with measurable data. So the quantitative data of the study was obtained from the Google Form questionnaires. The qualitative method is an unstructured method which consists of words, participants' opinions, theory generation, and process-based analysis. So the qualitative data of the present study was obtained from semi-structured interviews. And the study was conducted with the participation of 30 ESL students who were selected from random sampling. They are the candidates for the FCE test conducted by ESAL College International, whose ages range from 12 to 17 years. 2 classes were selected for this study and 15 students from each class were selected. In order to conduct the interviews, 6 students were taken from the sample of 30 students to collect qualitative data for the study. The first language of all the participants is Sinhala, and they learn English as a second language. Additionally, the participants were provided with a consent form that contained the purpose of the study. The questionnaire that consisted of 10 questions was created to obtain data about the linguistic features of the listening resources for the FCE test, while the answers are recorded on a 4-point Likert scale. The participants were given 15 minutes to fill out the Google form. And the purpose of the interviews was to triangulate the information which was obtained through the questionnaires and to obtain information about the reasons behind the learners' difficulties in listening comprehension. Subsequently, 6 semi-structured interviews were conducted over the telephone for 15 to 20 minutes after their FCE test. The collected quantitative data were analyzed using SPSS and qualitative data was analyzed using thematic analysis. Now I would like to invite Chamali to present the results of the study.
Now I'm going to discuss the results we got for our research questions. Our first question was, to what extent are FCE candidates exposed to listening in English? And we gathered the information under the subtopic, their prior experience in acquiring listening skills before attempting the FCE test. According to the findings, the participants have not had good practice in listening before attempting the FCE test. One interviewee revealed the reason for not practicing listening previously, as his English teacher has often missed the listening lessons in the classroom. And another interviewee stated the reason for her bad listening performance as a lack of access to listening materials. So, teachers' poor engagement in listening activities and the lack of resources to practice listening make them incompetent in comprehending complex listening texts, which are commonly used in FCE listening texts. The second research question was, what type of listening difficulties are encountered by FCE candidates? According to the results of the questionnaire, the listening difficulties are caused by both the lack of English fluency and the lack of exposure to spoken language among the participants. So this table is some of the statements of the questionnaire which was given to the participants, and they rate their preference from never to always. And according to the table, the pronunciation of some speakers is considered a source of listening problem for many participants, and also more than 3/4 of the students attribute their incomprehension to patterns of intonation. So as you all know, signal words of a language help the learners to understand the material thread of thought. But unfortunately, in the study, most of the students fail to recognize the signals indicating that the speaker is moving from one place to another. And also, this shows that the majority of the students find it difficult to understand natural speech, which is full of hesitations and pauses. Significantly, the variation of accents used by the speakers in listening materials causes students trouble in listening comprehension because they have a very little exposure to different accents. And according to the participants, another serious issue in listening comprehension they encountered was the speed of speech used in the listening text. Therefore, according to the data collected from the questionnaire, unfamiliar pronunciation and the intonation of the speakers and inability to identify signal words due to the speed and varied accents are the causes of listening comprehension, listening difficulties encountered by the FCE candidates. And according to the results of the semi-structured interviews, the main difficulties are gathered under 3 points. The first difficulty is unclear pronunciation of the speakers in listening text. So all the interviewees said that they were not successful in listening comprehension tasks of the test because of the unclear pronunciation of the speakers. So one of their utterances are given here. So there's a considerable impact of the speaker's pronunciation in listeners' comprehension ability. And another difficulty they had was limited English vocabulary of the listeners. So poor vocabulary is another major issue that impeded the understanding of spoken utterances in the target language. So FCE candidates should possess an adequate vocabulary to score well for the listening section of the FCE test. And listeners' poor knowledge of grammar is another difficulty encountered by the participants. So one of the participants mentioned indirectly that the poor grammar knowledge she had was another reason for the listening difficulty she encountered in the test. So even though the participant did not directly explain the connection between grammar and listening comprehension, there was an indirect connection between them. So it's necessary for FCE candidates to improve grammar knowledge gradually in order to comprehend a complex listening text during the test. As for the recommendations, ESL students are recommended to enrich and improve their vocabulary knowledge by expanding the usage of English and practicing fluently. And also, in order to improve the students' listening comprehension, ESL teachers are recommended to encourage the students to constantly improve their vocabulary and grammar and to encourage the students to develop their interest in the culture of English language, because they need to learn the vocabulary items related to the culture and their usage to foster the listening comprehension. So finally, as the conclusion, listening comprehension is still a problem for many ESL students who face the FCE listening test. The prior experience of the selected candidates in acquiring listening skill was not sufficient before attempting the FCE test. So the listening difficulties encountered by FCE candidates, such as unclear pronunciation and intonation of the speakers, and inability to identify signal words due to the speed, varied accents of the speakers, and their poor knowledge of grammar and vocabulary, were revealed by both the questionnaire and the semi-structured interviews. So finally, it is expected that the results of this study will contribute to overcoming the listening difficulties encountered by Sri Lankan ESL students in FCE listening tests. So these are the sources we referred in our study, and this is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to both of you. Before I launch into my comments and questions, can I ask whether anybody has any comments, any feedback, questions? Okay, so my question is to do with, if I understood it correctly, lack of connection between what you found and what you recommended based on your findings. Because in your findings, you identify that intonation is a problem, signal words, they are unable to pick up signal words due to speed, pronunciation is definitely a problem, things like that. And then vocabulary and culture are also brought out, but I would imagine the other ones would be more serious impediments to listening and comprehension. And your recommendations say that students should be exposed to more vocabulary and more grammar. But I was looking very carefully at your table, and there the more problematic areas seem to be the suprasegmental factors, the bigger things like, intonation and stress, and other matters like accent. But I didn't see any of those come in as recommendations, any ways of addressing those. Do you have any comment on that?
Thank you, Dr. Romala, for the question. And in our recommendation, we recommended both ESL learners and ESL teachers to expose them much into the British accent. And we expect here exposing them meaning like practicing them with the intonation of the speakers and making them familiar with the British accent of the speakers. That's what we expected in recommendations.
Okay, all right. And how does this sit with your understanding or assessment of Sri Lankan English? How would you expose your students to samples of British English? Have you considered these?
Like one way of making them familiar is by doing small workshops during the classroom and letting them to listen to British news, simply like letting them to listen to watch the videos of British speakers, maybe TED Talk videos, kind of like that.
And what is the purpose of the students doing this FCE or CFE? Why do they do that, gain that qualification?
It is like B2 level CEFR, and it is accepted by a number of business and educational institutes worldwide. And also it's accepted to enter as an undergraduate in many programs of English medium, which are conducted by English medium in non-native speakers of countries.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, anyone? Comments? Okay, thank you very much to both of you and good luck.
Thank you.
Let's invite our next speaker, please.
Hello everyone, I'm Bhagya Tenakon and I'm going to share the results that I got from my current study on examining English as a second language learner's perception towards video feedback on paragraph writing. So then let me move on. So this is how I have organized my presentation, and I will start with a brief introduction for my current study. Then I will move on with the research methodology, then the results and the discussion. And as for the final part of the presentation, I will move on with the recommendations and the final conclusion that I have obtained from my current study. So then let me start. So here is a brief introduction for my current study. So according to Hammer 2013, what he has mentioned was that writing is a thinking process which involves generating ideas, planning, goal setting, monitoring and evaluating. And apart from that, what he has mentioned was that writing consists of some stages that should be done by the writer in conveying the message of writing. Then according to Ackman 2016, what they have mentioned was that writing is a process that needs to be practiced over time, improved with the help of the teachers, and it is an indispensable part of language learning that demands learners to receive a form of feedback to improve their writing skill. So then let me move on with the concept of feedback. What 2016 mentioned was that feedback is the information about current performance that can be used to improve future performance. So this feedback can be provided in number of ways, including written feedback with oral explanation and conferencing. Then what OSCOL 2014 mentioned was that even though written feedback is the most commonly used teacher feedback form, it is disadvantaged for certain courses. So in such a context, with the continuous evolution of technology, different methods of feedback have been introduced to provide effective feedback. So in this respect, what ESL teachers used was audios plus videos in order to provide feedback. So according to the prior studies, which mentioned evidence that video feedback is more personal, caring, conversational, as well as engaging. So thereby providing the background for the present study and considering the availability of little research exploring that pedagogical and practical appropriateness of video feedback in ESL learners' paragraph writing in Sri Lanka, the present study intends to examine ESL learners' perception towards video feedback on paragraph writing. So then let me start. So here, the first thing that I want to bring your attention is the purpose of this study. So what I want to study was that the learner's perception towards video feedback in ESL writing. So for that, I used an experimental research design. So a sample of 20 undergraduates from the Department of Industrial Management of University of California was selected on a random sampling method. So before moving into the research instrument, the foremost thing that I want to highlight here is that this whole research consisted two main parts. So in order to address the first part of the research, I used participants' multiple draft of writing paragraph. And the second part of the research, that is learners' perception towards video feedback, which was addressed by a questionnaire, and questionnaire was administered at the end of the study for the experimental group of this study. Then move on to the data analysis instrument. SPSS statistic was used to analyze the close-ended questions in the questionnaire. On the other hand, the open-ended questions in the questionnaire were examined through data-driven coding. So then let me move on to the data collection procedure. So to begin with, the participants were grouped into the treatment group and the control group based on a random assignment. After that, both groups were asked to develop a descriptive paragraph and a narrative paragraph in 2 respective weeks. After that, the written feedback was delivered to the control group and video feedback was provided to the experimental group. Then move on to the learners' perceptions towards this video feedback. The main thing that I want to highlight was that this questionnaire was administered only for the experimental group in order to address their experience and feelings toward the use of video feedback in writing. So then let me brief down how I have arranged my questionnaire. So it included 35 questions with close-ended questions and open-ended questions. And it was developed under 7 main sections, starting with what the experimental group think about the feedback. Predominantly, it followed with the engagement, the revision, and the quality and quantity of video feedback. After that, the next thing that I wanted to realize was that learners' preferences whether to receive video feedback or written feedback. After all, participants' knowledge, feeling, and their understanding about video feedback was realized through open-ended question. Then as for the last part of the questionnaire, I collected the demographic details of the participants. Then another important fact that I want to highlight here is that the questionnaire was administered in both target language and mother tongue in order to better reflect the nuances of the target language. Then let me begin the results and the discussion. So before moving into this section, I will brief down what I got from the first part of my research. So in a nutshell, the accumulated quantitative data through participants' writings were employed to investigate whether students who receive video feedback report high level of correction into their written work as compared to students who receive written feedback. So accordingly, the validity was examined with parametric test, independent sample t-test. Then in accordance with the outputs of the first and second writings, they conveyed that there is a significant difference between written feedback and video feedback. So then let me begin the results that I gained for learners' perceptions. So to begin with, in accordance with the descriptive analysis of the class-centered questions, the present study investigated responded following positive perception towards video feedback. So when it comes to the engagement with video feedback, majority of the participants mentioned that video feedback helps them to improve their writing skill as well as to pay more attention to the ELT practitioner's comment. Apart from that, in order to get better understanding how to revise their writing and to spend more time reviewing their individualized screencast feedback, then move on to the revision process. Majority of the participants mentioned that video feedback helps them to elaborate their writing, then understand issues related to the content of their writing, then understand issues related to grammar, language, vocabulary, spelling, punctuation, as well as capitalization of the writing as well. Then move on to the next part of this questionnaire. What I realized was that there is a high quality and quantity in this feedback channel. So what I got from the participant was that they have mentioned that video feedback helped them to understand the feedback of their writing, as well as they feel that the video feedback is constructive, as well as they feel more conversational and interactive when they use this video feedback in order to revise their writing. Then apart from that, they have mentioned that video feedback contains more emotions and they give a clear impression of what is being commented and assessed, and it provides both positive comment as well as correction. Then moving into the next part of the presentation, learners prefer video feedback rather than written feedback. So according to the data I got from the participants, the figure 1 and table 1 indicate that 50% of the participants strongly agree that they prefer video feedback rather than written feedback. They have already got written feedback for their ESL writings, but this video feedback is something new to them. So it's something new experience for them, a novel approach to them. So they have mentioned that they strongly agree to use this video feedback as one of the main feedback method in their classrooms. Then move on to the next part. When it comes to the learners' perception that I got through the open-ended questions, what I realized was that they have mentioned that video feedback helped them to integrate technology into their ESL classrooms, as well as video feedback is accessible and it's user-friendly, and it helped them to build a kind of closeness with their ELT practitioners, and it's a novel approach in ELT. And one of the participants have mentioned that as a recommendation to integrate video feedback into ELT. Then as a coin, it has two sides. Even this thing has two sides. The video feedback has two sides, that it has potential drawbacks, and these are the potential drawbacks that I have identified. Technical difficulties, then it's a costly process, and there are and it's a kind of software which is difficult to access, and the initial anxiety they gain when they watch the video clip initially. Then let me move on to the last part of my presentation, that is the recommendations and the conclusion that I came through this research study. So the outcomes of this experimental study convey that teacher feedback delivered in the form of videos is pragmatic than teacher written feedback when ESL learners revise their subsequent written work, as well as learners persist positive impression towards video feedback in terms of engagement, revision with the video feedback, as well as its quality and quantity. Then in addition, learners voiced their own positive vision and experience when they engage with video feedback. And these findings of the study suggest a number of noteworthy implications for ESL writing. And the findings retrieved from this study manifest that video feedback is a worthwhile practice in ESL writing. Hence, further research is needed to determine the viability of video feedback for larger learner cohorts. Therefore, my recommendation for future studies is that future studies can be conducted with a larger sample size to examine the generalizability of the findings. So then let me wind up my presentation. So here are the references that I used for this presentation, and that is the end of my presentation. And thank you all for listening, and it's time for the questions.
Thank you very much, Bhagya, and very interesting and very systematic presentation, and I appreciated that. Thank you, Mihiri, for switching the camera on, because I had a lesson here. I think Mihiri hugely prefers giving video feedback, whereas I am more old-fashioned and I do written feedback, and I was thinking about you, Mihiri. Any comments on Bhagya's findings?
The only thing is, how sustainable is it? Because I mean, as Dr. Rasul pointed out, I do like to use it, but it's actually a lot of work, right? I mean, and even I can't do individual. I just do it in groups. Bhagya, it's very hard to do individual. Any suggestions maybe from the literature for like a kind of an easy way to do the video feedback?
Yeah. First, I would like to thank both of you for the positive comments. Then Dr. Romo and Ms. Jans, when I refer the literature, what I realized was that it is easy and it is applicable when the students or with the students with the smaller sample, for like 10 to 15 or like 15 to 20. So classroom with that kind of students is for that. And when it comes to the students with larger class, then it's really difficult. And the other thing, if we are to provide it for the group work, then it is easy.
Yeah.
One feedback for the whole group.
Yes, Dr. Ramo. Yeah.
And this is again my unfamiliarity with this way of providing feedback. Did you mention that giving video feedback helps spelling, punctuation, capitalization, and all of that?
Yes,
How?
yes, Dr. Ramo, because when I provide the video feedback, I mention them, like giving the spellings for the words. That is how I did, because they are first year students, first year undergraduates. So if there is any misspelling mistake, so then I correct it and read the word, told the word. For example, like if it is undergraduate, if there is a mistake in the spelling, so I told that this is the correct way that you need to write the spelling, and like that. That is how I corrected the spellings.
I think what we're looking at is a much more elaborated feedback than writing, because whatever that we just use shortcuts and all, it's not so clear, no? When we are speaking, it's always clearer.
Yes. Yeah. And the other thing is, they have mentioned that they felt the initial anxiety when they watched the video clip initial, because it's kind of like they are physically seeing in me even through the video. So they had kind of anxiety when they watch it initially, but with the time being, they got adapted to that.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you also said that it helped, the students said that it helps them integrate technology. So there's, to my understanding, there's no real integration. There's just receiving through technology, no?
Yes, Dr. Ramo. Yeah. They are receiving some feedback through technology.
But I think this is something we could take to tech people and ask, okay, how can we give video or recorded feedback in a more efficient way? Maybe like using hyperlinks or something like that. There might be some space for some collaboration with computer people, I think.
What I was, Miss Mary, what I used was Edmodo. I got the email address, then I added all of them to the Edmodo, and then I shared the individualized video clip through Edmodo.
Edmodo, okay.
Yes.
Because I was thinking along the same lines and wondering whether, as you correct a spelling error,
yes,
whether you were also supplementing it with something that was typed up or, visually also available instead of you spelling it out, and whether they were getting that kind of dual modal or multimodal feedback.
Did you use a whiteboard in your recording?
No, Miss Jans. I just got a snapshot of their the writing that they shared with me, and I just used that. I didn't use any of the whiteboard or any other thing, and even I didn't use any of the one line in like red color line even in their writing. I just used my sound for that. Yeah.
Interesting. But a lot of work, no?
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for your compliments.
All right, thank you everyone. Then are there any comments for Bhagya from our other participants? Okay, if there aren't any other comments, let me thank everyone for being here, for presenting, and my thanks also to the tech team from the Open University and Mihiri Jans for being our convener today. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
I must thank the session chair, Dr. Romola Rasool, who is the director of the PGIE. I'm sorry we couldn't do the intro at the beginning, but there was a technical sort of a hiccup. So I'm doing the intro. I think everybody in the session knows who you are, but I think we must formally recognize you and thank you for your service to iHours 2022. Thank you so much, Dr. Romola Rasool.
You're welcome, Mihiri, and thank you to all our former students. It just warmed the heart to hear you all call me Dr. Romo. That makes me feel so good. I appreciate it. Okay, have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Take care.
Bye.